I always thought the fact that Trump was so enthusiastic for the election to make its way to the Supreme Court, and I know you guys looked at his tweets, you know, Supreme Court, Supreme Court. I mean, the whole Texas case, of which now Speaker Mike Johnson was the tip of the spear, as Liz Cheney keeps reminding us all to rally U.S. congressional support for, was a device to stop the steal in front of the Supreme Court. I mean, just take us back in time to how integral, in Trump's view, in your investigation, the Supreme Court was.
Yeah, so the whole political coup, Nicole, dependent upon reliable Republicans, either in Congress or on the Supreme Court, being willing to go along with this crazy theory of John Eastman's that you could reject certified slates of electors, get it to the House of Representatives. John Eastman actually suggested that the Supreme Court potentially would avoid getting involved because it was a political question, which would then kick this to Congress, where the president and former president and his co-conspirators believed that the fact that they controlled 26 or 27 of the state legislators, if they could just get it thrown into the House, that they could win. All of this depended upon the false belief that Republican office holders or judges appointed by Republican presidents would go along with it. Thankfully, that did not happen. From Mike Pence to Brett Raffensperger to Bill Barr to lots of people. It feels strange defending them because I disagree with them on so many things. But on this issue, they didn't go along with it despite their political ideology. So there's no question, Nicole, that the president hoped that the fact that he had appointed so many of these judges and others were very sympathetic politically to him would be an important consideration in executing this legal strategy, which had no basis.
You know, I take Dahlia's point that we shouldn't get lost in, and I think, Dahlia, you're referring to the interview with Fox News. I think only Kristi Noem has gone on Fox News to defend herself from something that she said and made it worse. So Alito joins Kristi Noem in that category. But it is important to talk about the climate that his neighbors felt and the reason this story came out 4 years later. Because I think that there's so much to deduce from how a human being treats their neighbors and the relationships they have on their block and the relationships they have in a school community and whatnot. The Times reports the half dozen neighbors who saw the flag or knew of it were anonymous because they said they did not want to add to the contentiousness on the block. They feared reprisal. I mean, this is not a new story. This happened almost 4 years ago, and the neighbors were scared to say what they saw. I mean, I worked in an administration that said, if you see something, say something. We are so paralyzed by the threat of domestic extremism that the neighbors of a Supreme Court justice who were hanging the insurrection flag in their yard were too scared to tell anybody?
It's that, and it's almost scarier than that. I mean, you're certainly right. The notion that they were afraid of reprisal or that they stayed anonymous tells you where we are in this moment of, stochastic terror and incitement of violence. But I think there's another point under that is almost more chilling, which is, why are lawyers who argue cases before the Supreme Court, January 6 cases, not standing up and saying, you should be recused, you're totally biased? Why is Clarence Thomas on this case? They're not doing that either. They're chilled, too, for fear of reprisal. The argument in Anderson, the Colorado case, of course, everybody knew that Justice Thomas, and now we see Justice Alito, shouldn't have been sitting on that case, but nobody says it. So we're looking at not just the neighbors who are terrified of reprisal, we're looking at everyone, an entire country that is afraid to say, this is not how it's done. Why? Because they have absolute immunity from any consequences. There's almost no point in speaking up if you have a monarchic court that has the power to decide who faces consequences and that they never face consequences.
Andrew Weissmann, President Biden sat right where you're sitting and told me no way, no how would he ever contemplate any Supreme Court reforms. You've got, as the clip on Maureen Jo pointed out, you've got public faith in the Supreme Court plunging. It's fallen faster than any institution in civic life. And Senator Blumenthal, who's going to join us in a minute, is right when he said it's less popular than Congress, less popular than the media. Take that. There is a remedy. I mean, Roberts could hold the justices to the same standard. These are the standards for employees of the Supreme Court. Employees may not engage in partisan political activity. Partisan political activity is political activity relating to elections contested by political parties. For example, employees may not publicly support or oppose a partisan political organization or candidate. This includes displaying signs or bumper stickers stating positions on social media. Employees may not engage in nonpartisan political activity if the activity could reflect adversely on the dignity or impartiality of the court, or if it interferes with official duties. The upside-down American flag, a symbol carried by insurrectionists, certainly is associated with one of the two parties. Those were Trump supporters at the Capitol that day, and it absolutely makes it impossible for that body to be viewed as dignified.
Look, there are remedies. I mean, I won't say it is easy. I mean, obviously, Dahlia's point is that people who appear there can actually have more gumption. We're about to hear, we've heard from Senator Durbin, there are other senators who can actually have hearings. They can do more than just say what we're saying, which is this shouldn't happen. But they're in actually a position to do more about it. And to exert pressure. And then, obviously, there was a presidential commission on what to do with the Supreme Court. You know, the leading sort of idea is to have term limits.
Yeah.
So it doesn't solve, you know, the ethics issue, but it, you know, bit large, but at least it cabins it so that the person isn't there for as long as this.
Forever.
Yeah. I just want to make just to look at the weeds for a second. Can we just consider for a moment what Justice Alito's defense is here, understanding that because of the photo, he can't just say it didn't happen? Even assuming, let's assume his wife put it up. Let's take that as a given, even though, you know, we just have his statement. There's lots of reasons to think that it's his lawn. He didn't see it. I mean, look at this.
He didn't even say he didn't see it.
Exactly. I mean, like, it's up for days. He never saw that. I mean, he didn't talk to his wife. He didn't see the flag. He didn't think, maybe I should take this down. Remember the environment we were in. I mean, let's just go back to January 6th. What was going on in Washington? I mean, I keep on saying this about the judges who have these cases. Everyone who was in Washington lived it. It was happening there around them. I don't think people can understand just how central it was to what was happening in that city and how shocking, even for us just watching on TV. And he didn't think, maybe I should take this down. I mean, and then the response is, I'm doing this in response to what? How is putting a Stop the Steal flag that you know about, you are not taking down, how is that somehow justified by a neighbor? I mean, look, I don't care. Let's say the neighbor says,
my neighbors mean I'll side with the trees. And
what if the neighbor says, you know, go Biden? That means you put up this flag as a sitting Supreme Court justice. I mean, it is so much might makes right, and it is such a denigration of what should be sort of a court that people revere.
Let me ask you a real quick last question, Dahlia. I mean, Alito is there because Harriet Miers, who's Bush's dear friend and his pick for this seat, doesn't make it, right? There's not enough support in his own party. The nomination fails. So Alito is Bush's distant second choice after his dear friend Harriet Miers, who was White House counsel. Does that add to the chip on his shoulder? Is he an embittered, radicalized partisan hack? I mean, what happened to Alito, or was he always this guy?
He wasn't this guy. And in fact, on the Court of Appeals, he was not known to be this guy. There's no question, I think, that he feels that his confirmation hearing for the Supreme Court, that they made his wife cry, that he was insulted. You may recall they called him or implied that he was a racist because of a group he was involved with in Princeton. And from that point on, I think he has become angrier and angrier. And I think you're quite right. One of the really shattering parts of this story is this is not Justice Alito, holding up, some standard for equality and dignity and, the American way and freedom. He's having a fight, and in order to own his neighbor, he's decided to put up insurrectionist symbol. The smallness, the pettiness of this is the hill he wants to die on. That's the part that is, as Andrew says, so beyond unbecoming for somebody who is going to be deciding in the next few weeks and months massive, massive existential questions about presidential power and the rule of law.